Kevin. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. For anybody that doesn't know you, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Well, thanks for the invitation, firstly, Shona. Always a pleasure to have an opportunity to share a message with, people who are passionate about giving good news and giving good inspiration to others. So I'm Kevin Whelan, founder of Wealth Builders, and it does what it says on the tin. It's not wealth reducers, it's wealth builders. So we spend our life obsessing and dedicating, helping people to become financially independent, because we live in an uncertain world and most people don't make it. 95% the population do not get completely financially independent, and as a result they live a life of significant compromise often, and usually they find out too late in later life. But we've worked out, through my experience and through which I'm sure you'll dive into with your razor-like questions, how to do it in about 5 years on average.
Okay.
So we think, a committed person with a couple of hours a week can become financially independent in 60 months. So why wait 60 years? But most people still, Shona, simply will not do it. Anyway, so I founded the organization. They call me the chief visionary,
No,
which means, yeah, I like it. When they said, would you like to be chief visionary? I said, yeah, I like that title. Which means I'm the spokesperson. I spend my life trying to convince anybody they should be financially independent. And we have a personal ambition, or I have a personal, it's mine actually, 50,000 people we want to help, which is the reason for that, by the way, is the imagination I have in my mind. I'm a Northeast boy in my roots. Newcastle United is my team. Don't, you don't have to get too passionate about football. I know we've got football coming up and football's coming home and all that, but I just wanted to imagine 50,000 people trying to help somebody else, because part of the whole ethos is to almost be reaching out ahead of you to ask for help, but also have the humility and the I suppose, the integrity of reaching behind you to help somebody else. So this whole idea of a chain of people helping each other. And I imagine 50,000 people, Newcastle United, 50,000 fans pouring out of the ground, infecting somebody else with the idea of don't let things happen to you. Create a plan to build wealth, because when you do, your life transforms and you get to live a life you never want to retire from, which is why somebody cheeky would be thinking, he looks a bit old and wizened. Why is he still working?
Never. Why would anyone think that?
But it's because I don't want to retire because I'm having too much fun. But when I get bored with it, I'll probably give it a miss. And somebody else will step into the chief visionary role. But right now, I got it.
Excellent. Does that title even exist anywhere else? I think they made that just for you, Kevin. Yeah, it did. Okay, cool. So can you tell us a little bit about, you've got this vision of this is what you want to do, but where did it come from? Where did it begin and how long ago was that?
That's a great question. It happened in two little stages. In the first stage was, I was a young economist. My degree is economics, but I'm going back many years. Leeds University is where I got my degree. And my father died when he was 46, tragically. And that did, there were two consequences of that. One is we were kind of genetic peas in a pod. So I'm not giving a sob story, but this is what I thought at the time in my late 20s was, if I don't make old bones, if I go when he went at 46, I can't save enough. I'm an economist, I can do the math. Can't save enough after tax to give a life to a family that I wanted to have. And I was getting married in 89. And so I spoke to my wife and said, I don't want to carry on trading time for money. It's not going to work. I'd rather quit this now, build some things, didn't know what, but build some things which I now call assets, that will outlive me, so they support you. But you're going to have to back me because I'm not going to have a job. And she went, well, we better do it now then, hadn't we?
What was she doing at the time? What was she working as?
What was she working as? She was She was a graduate of the London College of Fashion. Although I don't remember doing too many things fashionable, but she was a seamstress. She was always making things, and she made her own wedding dress, and a fantastic
Nice.
wedding dress it was too. But that's what she was doing. So nothing highbrow, nothing sophisticated, just ordinary people, just realizing this probably ain't going to work. And then when I noticed that, with good intentions, my dad was a North Sea oil rig worker, had a little business, not a big one, was other people would be recruited by him. So BP would pay him to
Mhm.
have a welder on this job and a diver on this job, so he was like an agent.
Yeah.
And we started to notice, we had a nicer house and two cars in the drive instead of a beat old banger. So we came from a council house kind of principles where we grew up in council houses, and it just started to make a difference. Then when he died, we realized at the end, no will, no life cover,
Okay.
nothing to pay off the mortgage, nothing to support the business to continue. So everybody left the business,
Mhm.
and basically he left a mess. And that wasn't, he was a bad guy, of course he wasn't, but it was bad execution of plans.
Yeah.
So I kind of resolved to be a guide to help people take care of stuff, because people put stuff off.
Yeah.
So that's when it happened, really. It was around between 25 and 30. Um, I started off in earnest um, when I was about 30,
Mhm.
and I trained as a mortgage advisor,
Okay.
legal in general in Croydon, dizzy heights of Croydon, knocked on all the big insurance companies' doors and said, "You don't know me, but I'm pretty bright and I'm hardworking. Gives a job." Basically.
Do you say
And
that? You said geezer job.
yeah, something like that. So I got offered. Well, basically those days everything was self-employed, right? There was no jobs, so to speak. I was self-employed with can you fog a mirror? You've got the job. Basically, is what it was in the end. So I fogged a mirror and learned how to be a mortgage broker. And in the initial part of my life, you won't believe this. This is an interesting one. Nobody's got this one out of me. Um, I used to knock on council house doors in Tooting and Mitcham, saying, "Do you know you could buy your council house for a fraction of the price that the value is worth? And I can do a mortgage for you so you could own it. Would you like to do that?" Now, apart from some hairy ass blokes in a vest kicking me out, um, I got a few, and
Yeah.
so I did a lot of mortgages, became very successful very quickly because I found a niche.
Yeah.
And that's the next thing I learned. Actually, if you find a niche, if you find something and become an expert in a niche,
Mm.
you can really carve a very, very good pathway. So that's what I did. So the next thing I did was I did my next idea. By the way, my wealth dynamic is creative, so I'm full of ideas.
Yeah.
Hence the chief visionary role.
It makes sense. It all
Yes.
makes
So I thought I don't want to do council ads anymore. This is hard work. Um, do you know what? My dad didn't make a will. I bet loads of people haven't made wills. So
sense.
I learned to be a will writer.
You like to learn. That's good.
Oh yeah. And at the same time as doing the mortgages,
Hmm.
I became a will writer. So I did free wills for anybody. Right? Can you believe that?
Okay.
Your
What?
will for free. The catch was you had to tell me all of your financial facts. So then I could analyze them, because at that point I was learning to become a financial advisor. So I became a financial advisor. And then after that, I did free tax returns. So I learned how to do tax returns with software, and I was doing self-assessment tax returns for free
Yeah.
for employed people, because they couldn't be asked doing them. So I knew they were higher rate taxpayers, more likely to pay a bigger contribution into their pension, which meant I could offer more pensions. And so the whole kind of process of learning and operating in a niche worked. And that's basically what I did. And when I nailed the niche, I taught other people the niche, and they paid me a kind of a license fee to be able to do what I had learned what to do. So I sort of got into the habit of building things, passing them on to somebody else for a fee, moving on. And I've done that for the rest of my life. But now I've kept things instead of leaving them. I now own lots of things.
Mm.
And that's the essence of building wealth, is building assets, controlling or owning assets, and using those assets, which I now call pillars. Um, and there are only 7 ways to build wealth. I'm sure you'll ask me that. But yes, but I didn't know that then.
Yeah.
I was just carving a creative pathway with no guide, no mentor, no helping hand, just me working my little cotton socks off and doing the best I could. And yeah, that worked for me. And then just got better, 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 smarter, smarter, smarter,
Hmm.
doing it, all the time, every day. And now I'm pretty smart at it and got a CAT scan brain that I can see in a moment or in a few moments, diagnose the financial health of anybody and get them to do better than they will do on their own. And more often than not, show them a way that they could take what they've got, what they know, what they're forgetting, what they're missing, and turn that into real wealth that can make a difference in their life.
Brilliant.
That's what I do.
That's cool. You've mentioned assets a couple of times. Now, I think most of the time people think of assets as property, but they're not the only type of assets, are they?
No, so I've got you said earlier on about, do you think the visionary thing they've given you is something they made up for you? And it is. And although I'm an economist, I've got my own definition of an asset,
Mm-hmm.
which is now enshrined in the whole wealth builder philosophy, which is an asset is something you own
Mm-hmm.
that is not you. It puts money in your bank account while you're asleep. You can pass the money you earn from that to anybody you like, your wife, your family, good causes. You do not have to be there for the money to show up. Then I set my brain to work. How many are there? How many can I get? And then go get them.
Mm-hmm.
I worked out over time, and I've written it all down. It's now encapsulated in my own IP, that there are 7. And there are 3 that most people have, and 4 additional ones they should have.
Okay.
So the 3 that most people have, which is why they end up not being wealthy, are what we call home capacity, or the bricks and the mortar and the environment in which they live,
Mm-hmm.
pensions, investments. So most people have those 3. They rich dad, poor dad, classic lines. Get good grades, get a good job, buy a house, put money in your pension fund, and have some money in the bank or investments. That's how most people plan their life. Unfortunately, it's not a good plan. It's a very slow plan, takes at least 40 years, and people don't have 40 years. It's very volatile. And for the most part, you're at the mercy of the stock market and an employer,
Mm-hmm.
and you have no control. And that's why most people struggle with that one. So the 4 additional pillars, I call the entrepreneurial pillars, come from a different mindset. So instead of reacting to a market, instead of being at the mercy of things you can't control, what could you do to have control, to be a creator of value, to own that value, and to be able to create a much higher, safer, more enjoyable return?
Mm-hmm.
And there are 4 of those. Property, so portfolio property, buildings that you own, property that is not the home you live in. Business or businesses
Mm-hmm.
that need to fulfill 3 criteria, which needs to be in a niche, high level of recurring income, needs to be able to work without you, so you can set it up and move on, the
Mm-hmm.
business will carry on working. Intellectual property, that's a good one. Creating an asset income from what how you package it, repurpose it, redeliver it, reshape it, hone it, sharpen it, to get to a place where what turns into money.
Yeah.
And then joint ventures or collaborations. And those are the 4 that most people would learn and aspire to. And each of those are broad categories. So if you take property as an example, the most popular asset class, easy to replicate, lots of training on it, it's a very common one. But there might be like 20 strategies, but within the world of property.
Yeah.
And people who know property could probably reel off 7, 8, or 9 of them, and there'll be language around that. HMOs, rent to rent,
Yeah.
buy to let, commercial to residential, BRR. There'll be a whole raft of language that we all learn in the wealth space. But there's language around all of the 7, and most people don't have that distinctive language. So often, when you don't understand the language, you get excluded. So we try and teach the language as quickly as possible to people. And then we create our own language so that people use it so they become part of a community.
Mhm.
Like pillars, or the things, or the assets themselves. We talk about um, never let 30 days go by without doing something to build your wealth. We build in mantras and core values that people learn. But most people have 1, 2, 3, and then we teach them how to take money in 1, 2, 3,
Mhm.
cross it over to the other side, so they build property, business, joint ventures, and IP. And the biggest one by far, and everybody will know that people who get into property will often tap into the equity of their home.
Yeah.
There are many ways you can use your home to create value. I mean, I could reel off at least half a dozen, and some of them people wouldn't even dream of. I mean, we got one client who rents out a property and goes and spends 3 months in properties using trusted house sitter. So basically, she works on a laptop 3 months of the year in Australia, in Africa, in somewhere else, and all she's doing is watering plants, feeding animals, and meanwhile she's living there rent free and earning money from the use of her property. There's just so many ways, with the freedom that she wants, is to go where she wants, how she wants to do it.
Mm.
She doesn't want to be tied to one place, because she's financially independent, so she can do all of those things. But the biggest one by far, I think, that creates the most value in my community is the repurposing of the frozen and forgotten pensions that most people hate, feel completely disconnected to, and kind of their only relationship with their pension is to get the statement, look at it, wish it were better, and put it back in the drawer. That's what most people do with their pensions, right? That's what they do.
I'm in a worse situation. I don't even have one.
Well, that's fine. If you don't have one, that's not a bad thing. But people pick them up, don't they, along their journey with jobs
Yeah.
and things like that, and they think they're okay, and they better than having nothing. But they usually they're very high costed. In other words, the biggest profiter of that is the financial services industry. It's an industry, and it needs to make profit, and it does. I know I used to be part of it, and I learned all of that. But now we take those pensions, or where we can help people, and they become and turn it into those new assets. So they take their pension and turn it into business or property or IP or joint ventures, and it means that they can get a higher return, a safer return. Generally, there are always risks. So I'm not giving anybody advice on a podcast or an interview, certainly not. So big caveat there. It's not for everyone, but for entrepreneurially minded people committed to building their wealth, then the use of that money, which is not used now for their life, it's wait till you're 65 to get it, but you could use it now,
Mm.
and it's tax free. So, that's the biggest one. And we call that the small self-administered scheme. What a sexy title that is, isn't it?
It's not as good as your title, but yeah.
No. Unfortunately, in 1973, it was coined, so we can't really change it because HMRC are the people who control it. So we can't change that, but we kind of call it a director's pension or an entrepreneur's pension or a
That
business.
sounds much better. Yeah, it's all about marketing.
Yeah, that wouldn't win any marketing prizes for sure, but I'd say we're very skillful at helping people identify whether that would be a good fit for them. And for many of our wealth builder members and people who go through our processes, to learn, it's a thing that brings them the most money. That was off the table is now on the table, and we provide all the training and guidance along that. But very popular one, that one.
Great.
So yeah, it's almost like getting it's a combination. Then it's a combination process because everybody's got a different mindset, wealth dynamic. Everybody brings a different set of initial money. Like you wouldn't bring pension, but you might bring something else.
Mm.
Somebody else might bring pension and no home equity, or they might bring some really strong intellectual value they've got, but they underutilized it because didn't appreciate they were really great at something. We try and find out what it is and say, well, how could you turn that into real value? So everybody brings something different, and everybody wants to learn something different. And as far as I know, and I remain unchallenged on this. Actually, there are two things I challenge people, and I'm unchallenged on it still, after a good decade now of raising the challenge. Number one, I believe we are the only holistic, impartial company teaching wealth in the whole of the UK. I think everybody else does one thing. We do property. We teach you how to trade Forex. We
Mm.
sell you Bitcoin. You know, we do everything.
Yeah.
We know about everything. Not to be a guru about it, but we know who the best people are in all of those areas. So we're almost like a curator, a librarian of the best people. I like to think I've got a big black book, not a little black book, that I can share with people and say, if you want to do that, here's how you could do that better, and here's the people we trust. And by the way, if you've got some great people you trust, let us know and we'll build them into our black book.
Mm.
So that's number one. And number two, I can't find asset number 8. I've tried, right? I've put it out there. If you can give me asset number 8, I will send you a very nice case of champagne. One of the things I've learned about over time is wine. So, I've done my sommelier stuff, not to go and serve wine in a restaurant. That's not my style, but to understand wine so I can appreciate it at a higher level. So I do that. But so I've offered the case of champagne, very nice champagne, to anybody who can give me pillar or asset number 8, and nobody's got it yet.
What category would wine and like art and things like that fall into? What pillar?
Okay, well, let's revisit our definition. So I'm
Let's
glad you walked
do that.
right into my trap, right? So the other one I get is gold, right? So, okay. Can you own those things? Yes. Do they put money in your bank account while you're asleep?
No,
Do they give you an automatic flow of cash
no,
when you hold it? Then you put the painting on the wall, do you get cash?
no.
Well, if you're Banksy, maybe. If you, but most people have to be dead to get money, because it's you get the fame later. What else did you say? Wine. Well,
Yeah.
no, it doesn't put money in your bank account while you're asleep. It might be worth more if you choose a great vintage, and somebody might buy it off you for more, but that's a trade.
Okay.
You can trade things, and that's a business.
Yeah.
But not all businesses are wealth building businesses. Many businesses are just trading time for money. They're just jobs with a different tax structure.
Yeah,
you,
that's
you
true.
used to go to work for a boss and you had a structure around you. Now you go to work for a lunatic, that's you, and you got no structure around you. And you're doing all the jobs, and now all of a sudden you've got 10 jobs instead of one, and you're only good at one of them. So these are the challenges that people have when they move from employeeship into business. But it's not really a business unless it operates in a niche, gives you a high degree of recurring income, and it can work without you. If it doesn't do that, it's not really a business. It's just another way of trading time for money. So yeah, I'm looking for number 8. I haven't got it. I think I know what it might be. And it might have something to do with blockchain. And it might have something to do with personal property rights. So I think in the future, we'll be able to not have our credit card and our Facebook tell everybody what we want so they can advertise to us. We'll have our own rights, and we can say, I know exactly what I do. I know exactly where my money goes because it's all recorded on blockchain. I will sell you the rights to my habits for a recurring income figure of £5,000 a year. Would you like to buy it? Something like that will happen in the future. We will have control over our own intellectual spending habits, our own property. Right now, we don't have that because your phone's picking up everything you're saying and doing. Your credit card bill is picking up everything you're spending. Everything you do is being watched by other people. Blockchain will put that back under your control at some point, I think, but it's not there yet.
I've not heard anything about that before, so that was interesting.
This is what I do. Right? I just think about the vision of the future and think, well, where's the next assets going to come from?
Yeah.
The whole asset building world changes continually. Look at property. Look at the changes in the planning rules. Look at the changes that's happening to the high street. You know, look at what's happened in the pandemic. There's so many things that will flow out from that, and you've got to be sensitive to that. People don't know what they're doing. They'll say, "Oh, the market's too hot. You can't buy anything in the market right now." That's not true. You can always find something of value if you put yourself in the process of creating value. I mean, I was talking to somebody today, and they said, you know, one of the big fund managers is over-egged in small-scale retail property. You know, it's not the retail property stuff just isn't making the money. So they're divesting themselves of that property to try and get some money back into their coffers. So they're selling at a discount, big discounts. So there are always opportunities to look at something and see how you can create value. And that's what being a wealth builder is. It's looking hard and finding ways to create value. And my job is to lead that thought process.
You meant the last pillar is about JVs, right? Tell me about the scariest JV you did that was, you knew it was going to work. You believed it was going to work, otherwise you wouldn't have done it. But it had that little risk element to it that you weren't quite sure about.
I think it's a good question. I know you're trying to pull something.
Something interesting. Yeah, go. Not that you're not. You are very interesting.
I think joint ventures are basically collaborations of people with a view to profit.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I've had anything that would be newsworthy for you in the property world. And I've done hundreds of joint ventures in property because I rigorously do due diligence and I haven't made any mistakes.
That's good. Well done.
Not one. In
And how
property.
did you manage that from the offset? Maybe it was because your experience in mortgages and stuff that you already knew a lot.
I don't know. I'm just I've always been cautious because I've never really been willing to risk a lot of money. So I see property as an investment of money. But what I'm very generous with and very risk comfortable with is risking my time. Because when you go, this is a fascinating insight actually that you made me realize that I would like to share. That when you become financially independent, and that does all that means is having enough income flowing from assets to have your time back.
Yeah.
So you don't need to go to a job, you don't need to go to a business, you don't need to show up anywhere.
Yeah.
Which means you've got a lot more time. So I'm very, very generous with myself to find ways to spend that time.
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's risky time. So I've made a big boo-boo. Do you want to know a big boo-boo I made?
Yeah, what happened?
Okay. So I wrote a book in 2004. I paid my mortgage off in 7 years flat and then wrote a book to teach other people how to do it because I always like to do something and then teach it.
Yeah.
And the book was called Save a Fortune, How to Completely Eliminate Your Mortgage Loans and Credit Cards Fast. And then in that, I coined the term your debt-free day, the day when you own everything and own nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a simple way for people who didn't want to get into wealth, and I wasn't really teaching that then, just to say, wouldn't it be, whenever you buy something with debt, forget about debt leverage, but consumer things, whatever you buy with debt costs you more money.
Yeah.
Buy a car with debt, you're going to pay more for the car.
Interest,
You
yeah.
buy a house with a mortgage, you're going to pay more for the house. And
Yeah.
but most people need a mortgage because that's how it works. But so the point is, you know, the whole book was orchestrated around the ways that you could work the system and look at techniques to eliminate your mortgage fast, to eliminate all your consumer debt fast, so that you had more money left and none of it was on debt.
Yep.
And it wasn't going into whether you should do buy to let and all that. It was very simplistic book. On the back of that, someone said to me, I love that term, debt-free day. You know, that sounds like a mantra, you know, when's your debt-free day? And I thought, that's an interesting term. And so I created a business called Debt-Free Day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I recruited lots of people and I chose a business partner to work with, somebody I'd worked with before. And we created not quite apps, but sort of games to play for kids to help them become debt-free and all sorts of weird and wonderful things. Didn't work.
Why?
It didn't. Because in the end, all the advertising we did and the website we created didn't attract smart people who wanted to be debt free. It attracted people in debt difficulties. And the business wasn't geared up to serve people, to be a debt counseling service.
Yeah.
And I had to close it. And I wouldn't say I lost money, but I didn't make any money from it. And I lost probably 18 months to 2 years of my life.
Could it have worked if, because it did have a niche, but it was the wrong niche that got hold of it? Could
Yeah,
you have rebranded it, remarketed it to find the niche that it would have worked for?
I could have done, but I didn't have the patience for it, because
Okay.
when you come from a place where your brain is wired to start things,
Yeah.
set them up and get out of the way, I couldn't make it work. So rather than try and make it work, is get onto something new. Go, right, that didn't work. Do something else.
Okay. And is that your advice for other people as well, or do you think that that's to do with your personality, that that's what you prefer to do?
But I don't give advice to people, because I deal in principles, not in advice.
Okay.
So you can ask me a question. I'll say, is that a principle? It isn't a principle that you should start things and move on. That's a unique personality trait.
Okay.
Well, it's not unique to me. There's many people who are creators. 20% of the population have probably have got 10 ideas before breakfast, and they start loads of things and don't finish them. I'm sure there's loads of people nodding and listening, going, yeah, that's me, and others who are so careful and cautious. And there are challenges with that. But I think the biggest lesson I have learned, though, is get other people who complement your wealth dynamic. So now I have a team of people, and they just let me be creative. That's what they want me to be, and they do everything else. And that's not in a delegated way. That's, Kevin, you give the most value to the business if you keep thinking about what's changing, what's happening, how can we be more creative, how can we create more products, more services, more ways to help people make distinctions and shortcuts, so that they can get to their wealth plan quicker, or they can get to it without taking the sort of risks that they would normally take. And that's what I do. I spend my life doing that now.
That's really cool to just be a creative.
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, at my school, so I work in a school for kids that have been excluded or going to be excluded from mainstream education. And we used to go visit advertising companies. And that's when I first learned that some people's jobs were just called the creatives. And I was like, that's amazing. That's the most amazing job you could ever have.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. We're talking about schools there and exclusions. I know you'll talk about it in a certain way, but if you don't mind, I'd just jump onto something you've made
Yeah,
me think
go
about
ahead,
again,
no problem.
which is, I think kids are excluded from learning about finance.
Yes.
Everybody's excluded from that. And I think there still seems to be a proliferation of the idea that everybody should be academic, and then you go from academic to a next level academic, which then you go into a job, and then you get on the treadmill, and then you perpetuate the same myth that I've just been trying to dispel for the last 20 minutes. I think there isn't enough done to give creativity in kids an airing that they could become not holders of jobs, but creators of value in different ways. And I've probably long ago parted company with the idea of trying to change the educational system. But I am creating a program. It's on stocks. It's going to be in Q3 this year, of wealth builders for teens.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be helping the the people that we touch, the people who are in our community, to become better role models, stewards, and guides for their children, so that they can be included in the idea of money, that it isn't a thing, it's just an idea. Money is just an idea. And so how you harness those ideas, how you involve kids with doing things, not to force feed them anybody's principles, but to give them a sense of, engagement with the subject of money, and understanding they can create value wherever they go. In my kids are 30, 27, and 24. And from the very get-go, I've said to them, look, whether you get a job or not, whatever you choose to do in your life, the purpose of me and the business of the family, because we encourage people to think about their family and create a family wealth business. because the idea of that is to create a trust fund that supports this family, the next generation, next generation, next generation. So they're aware of that. And rather than create a culture of dependency or entitlement, it's like be who you want to be, do what you want to do, but play full on. Give the most value from the team you're playing for. And that's how we look at it. And get the most value back from the environment you're in. Do that, you'll move on. And you move on better equipped to add more value to the next. And if that value means you want to turn into an entrepreneur and you want to be creative, but they're not the same as me, and I'm not trying to be carbon copies either, then you can do that. And that's just do that. And then that's what I would like you to do. And that's what they're doing. So they're all playing full out. I've got, one this shy of being a lawyer, another one just qualified as a surveyor on the 30th of June. One of the youngest surveyors in the industry, 23, and he's out doing valuations, and he's 23, crumbs. And my daughter, who works in the business with me, but she's mum. You can see my, I think, a granddad thing behind me there somewhere.
I can see that, yeah, the
Yeah,
telephone, yeah.
yeah. So, unfortunately, I'm known as Grumps,
Oh,
but there you go. But I try
you're
and put a
grumpy.
face on it because I'm a bit grumpy at times. Yeah.
Oh, you've been
Not,
very smiley today.
that's fine. No, but anyway, that's the fun of it. So, and I try and teach that. So, Wealth Builders for Kids is about, or for teens actually, because we're writing it for teens first and then younger generation after, is to try and bring that. And one of my collaborators, a JV, by the way, it's a JV with a teacher, right? He's passionate about it, and he said, he said he wants to change the teaching profession. I said, good luck. I'm not going anywhere near that, but I'll work with the people who already want to build wealth and help them give better lessons for the kids. But if you can change the whole educational system to bring financial literacy into the schooling system, then I applaud you for it. But I'm afraid I don't have the patience for it, because that would be boom, 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 brick wall, brick wall, brick wall, I'm sure. I hope he cracks it. But actually, we're looking for collaborators in this field, and people are reaching out to us now as they hear me talk about it on podcasts and
Yeah.
doing other visionary things. I get emails and LinkedIn and Facebook things. Can I help you with that? What can I do to help you with that? So look, if you're out there and you want to help with anything to do with kids, or you want to learn about wealth, just connect with me. I'm so generous with, I obsess about giving away free stuff because I want people not to feel like, oh, I want to be shy of building my wealth because somebody's going to sell me something.
Yeah.
I don't do that. We give free stuff and let people experience a little of building their wealth to see if they enjoy it, and if it's for them, they'll immerse themselves a bit more.
Well, I'm going to talk to you after this, Kevin. But yes, as you know, I'm working in that field, and yeah, I'm trying to crack the education system a little bit. More so because I do see so many young people that drop out of the mainstream education anyway, and so that's my focus. That even though finance may not be shown very well in mainstream education for those other students, it's not there at all.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about what you said about why maybe it's not delivered. And I was thinking maybe it's because the people that teach, they don't have those experiences in order to share them. And if you don't understand it yourself, it's hard to then share it with others, because you're talking about a theory. And if you've not experienced a theory, it is just a theory, and you can't talk about it with passion, or you can't answer questions about it, right? You can just read what's on the
Yeah. It's a catch-22 in many respects, because if you think about the educational system was designed essentially to create citizens that would contribute in jobs. And the educational system is probably the most repeated one. The whole, people go through academia, don't they? And uh, they get different levels of qualification. They keep going up the qualification level, and in the end, they just become heads on legs. They just become brains on legs, moving them from one place to another. It's just all brain. There's no output. There's no focus to it. There's no value being created necessarily. So consequently, the perpetuation of the education system is a worry for me. But I'd rather get on a soapbox, which I'm very dangerously getting close to stepping on, I'm going to step back and say that's for other people to solve. But I agree with you. The very people who do the teaching are not the very people to do the teaching of how to create financial independence, because there isn't any prospect of those in the teaching profession becoming financially independent other than the pension, or if they realize there's something more than the pension. And that's why, there are many teachers who go on and build businesses and build property and build other things, and that's great. But the job of teaching doesn't equip them for that in and of itself.
Yeah, because if you then had that wealth, you'd probably leave the profession, right?
I didn't want to say that, but I'm seeing I'm seeing actually at the moment, I'm seeing, which is another niche, by the way, that I think is a very powerful one that I'm trying to help people create for themselves, which is that there are people who are making changes in our programs from being financially vulnerable and uncertain to financially independent within a relatively short space of time.
Mhm.
And usually the consequence that they always give up the job. I don't think there's maybe 5% of the people love their job and they want to keep doing it, but most of the people don't. They, as soon as they can, they give up.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing. But the thing for me to pick up from that is the IP that gives you the right to. So if you're a doctor that doesn't want to suffer from burnout and you become financially independent, whether you want to carry on in profession or not, that's up to you. But you can teach other doctors a pathway.
Yeah.
If you're a teacher who's done that, you can teach other teachers the pathway.
Yeah.
So we've got students now doing that. We've got people who were policemen teaching other policemen how to exit from being a police officer because they retire earlier. We've got people who are ex-city bankers and brokers teaching city brokers with the highest pay, with the biggest challenge if they don't get their pension right, because then it's the biggest income for how to create wealth while they're in those jobs. Um, it's a fascinating area of creating almost like a pathway for others to follow that bridge again. It can work. Come with me. And so I think there's lots of scope there, including teachers.
Let's talk a little bit more, if you don't mind, about wealth builders for teens. How do you envisage that getting to the young people? Is it going to be something that you sell to schools or you sell to young people? Or will it be a free service for kids to sign up to? What do you think?
Well, it's none of those.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, no, it's okay. I thought about all of those, so you're quite right to inquire about them. Now, we'll be providing this to Wealth Builders students, the parents themselves who've embraced the philosophy, who've got the language, who are living the principles, and then we'll share that almost as an extra module so they can teach it to their kids. So it's more about involvement, and there will be modules for kids, but the early part of it is about getting them involved. I'll share with you a bit more of the program later, because remember, it's not been launched until
That's
quarter
okay.
three. So I can't give you everything because it's not all fully written yet. It's just on the stocks.
Okay,
But it
that's
won't be sold to schools
okay.
because they wouldn't buy it.
No, I don't know if they would. Yeah, that's a hard thing. I mean, budgets in schools are shrinking all the time.
Yes, exactly.
um, what about, you talked a little bit about wealth builders. It's about learning from people in front of you and helping a little bit of those people behind you,
Hmm.
sharing the knowledge. Do any of your clients, or you don't call them clients, do you?
All the members.
Members, much
Yeah,
nicer,
yeah.
team members. Um, would you consider going into schools and talking to young people yourself? Because we just talked about how teachers don't have that knowledge to share. Would some of your people do that?
I think it's probably going to come from those who've got the energy and the enthusiasm to want to do that.
Mm.
So, I mentioned earlier on, is anybody curious about it, wants to help? One of the ways that people can help is those who want to give, like, I don't know, I think this guy who's a teacher is talking to other teachers and saying, can I have a platform to talk to the kids about certain things? Or I know one lady who's very much into a leading light in the crypto world, and she's going back to school to to say to girls in particular, this is not just exclusively for blokes. Cryptocurrency and other things. Women can do it too, because the take up of women in wealth is less. The take up of women in property is less. The take up of women in SaaS is very much less, and the take up of women in crypto is less still. So there's still this gender gap that needs to be filled. So I think there's lots of passionate women wanting to share those lessons, both to women and to schools. And I'm sure there'll be many of our members who get to their level of success and want to share some insights wherever they can do that. It's not something that I've done. It's not something that I'm planning to do. But what I've learned about being a visionary is you're always moving forward. And when you move forward, something else comes into your field of vision and you go do it. So somebody will invite me to speak at a school or a university or a college, and I'll go do it. I'll just do it because it's in my DNA. I don't need to prepare anything. I know it, so I can just. This is what you want to learn. I can teach you this, and I think probably young entrepreneurship would be my passion. I would say, because I think jobs are not the only pathway from school, and we could debate whether or not even going to university is relevant anymore. So there are some issues around that I'll be thinking about over the coming years.
I think one of the things to consider with the teens is that you mentioned if you want to learn, and with teens it can be very difficult for them to want to learn.
Sure.
Or even to be open to other ideas. Would you say that there is a mindset factor required in order to receive the information that you would be getting?
Well, there's there has to be an open mind, because without the open mind, everything gets blocked out. And obviously, we're touching an area where you're quite passionate. I can hear it because you keep coming back to it, and I get it. I don't have the same knowledge and experience of you about how to deal with the mindset of children. I teach grown-ups. I don't teach children. I'm not qualified to really comment too much, except that the people who are collaborating with me are teachers.
Yeah.
And I'll be more than happy to bow to their superior knowledge. And it sounds like you're definitely somebody to be talking to.
I might be, yes. No, that's great. And I think one of the important things that you're saying as well is that you work with the people that have the knowledge in those fields. You come up with the ideas and then you build the team around the idea. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, before we finish up, is there anything, well, you've said lots of very valuable things, but is there anything else that you would throw out there into the world if you had to give the message? It's a message.
Well, that's a really interesting question, and I'm rarely taken aback, but that's a big question. I've got to think of an answer relatively quickly. I would say that the key thing to do is to be focused on adding value. Back to the thing about wherever you are, think about being not entitled to something, but giving value. Trying to understand how you give value. And if you can give more value, doors will open, opportunities will present, and you become more curious and open-minded as a person. And that curiosity leads to often an insight, a catalyst. You don't need tragedy like me to find a catalyst. It could be the inspiration from somebody else, but it's only an open mind that receives inspiration. Otherwise, everything else is prejudice. And you close your mind. So I'd keep an open mind, be curious like a child. We talked about children. And again, the reason I love what I do is because I'm a curious man, and I seek out every day, and I call it my primary ROI. We all economists like me always like a good ROI. It's not return on investment. It's probably, there are two ROIs I'd share, and then I'll shut up. The first one is everybody needs a reason to overcome inertia. And usually it's a catalyst. And a catalyst is something that moves you It doesn't have to move you physically. It has to move your mind to a place where you tilt your head or you listen to something in a different way and you change by doing that. And the other one is the curiosity angle, which is you're only one relationship, opportunity, or idea, ROI, relationship, opportunity, or idea, from a complete transformation in your wealth. And I seek those ideas out. I seek those relationships out, and I seek those opportunities out. And every day I do that. So I knew I was going to come on to this with you today. I didn't know what was going to happen, but I knew I'm either going to be an ROI for somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe you'd be just a fantastic collaborator on the Wealth Builders for Teens, and I'll have a great relationship that I didn't have at the beginning of the day.
I think that happened, Kevin. I think that was a success. Well done.
Is that a good enough answer for you?
That was brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing all the knowledge that you have, and you've been very inspirational. Just last thing, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I have a podcast, which I'm very proud of, which is called Wealth Talk, all one word. So you can check out what we do there. We're on episode 114 now, and we're downloaded now in 100 countries. So I'm thrilled about that. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever. We've got a Facebook group, which just look at Wealth Builders Facebook. There's enough places for people to find out about me. If you reach out to me by any method, I'll send you books and videos and other things completely free of charge, because I hope for somebody on this who's listening, I could be that relationship today that makes a difference to them. I'm the catalyst for them to go, you know what, I should do something different. I shouldn't trade time for money forever, be at the mercy of everybody else, work until I'm in my 60s and 70s. In fact, state pension is being pushed back even further. I think I could do it in 5 years. I'm going to give it a go, because then I'll get my life back.
Nice one.
Thanks for the invitation. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Excellent. I enjoyed talking to you too. See you
I'm
later.
sure it's not the end of our relationship now. I think we've discovered.
No, it's not. I'm just going to press pause and then I'm going to keep talking to you. I'm going to pretend to say goodbye.
Okay.